Apparently, if you're falling from way high up and you hit Alt F4 just before you hit the ground, you'll be able to survive the fall. Whoa, what? To my great surprise, it is true. You'll still take some fall damage, as when you load back into the match, the game will count it as you falling from wherever you closed out from. But this myth is 100% confirmed. This was just one of a bunch of myths and rumors I've been reading online from the Arc Raiders community, and we're going to be busting or confirming all of them by the end of this video. Apparently, if you put a fireworks box directly on a shredder's face, they'll become blind and no longer able to detect you. What an idiot. This is hilarious and 100% confirmed. Out of curiosity, I also tested it on a turret and got the same result. In theory, this might be able to work on a lot of different arc if you simply just get the placement exactly correct. Apparently, if you just crouch walk very slowly, you can move straight through a group of birds without disturbing them. Careful. Oh, god damn it. Yeah, I tried it a bunch of times, and no matter how slowly I attempted to go, the birds will always get freaked out and fly away, meaning this myth is officially busted. Here's an interesting one. Being over encumbered affects how fast you zipline. In order to properly do this one, I went to the practice range and rode the zipline while having a near empty inventory, and then again while over encumbered. The side-by-side comparison shows absolutely no difference in zipline, making this myth completely busted. Allegedly, if your raider is on fire, you can put out the flames faster by simply rolling immediately and constantly. And we're rolling, and we're rolling. That's not really doing much. Comparing how much damage I took while standing completely still against how much damage I took when I immediately started rolling, we find that there is literally no difference at all, meaning this myth is absolutely busted. I've heard people mention that you can hit escape in-game to show the in-proximity menu to see if there are any players hiding nearby that you might not be able to see. The theory goes you can do this when extracting to see if there might be any rats secretly camping the area. This isn't the case though. The in-proximity menu is kind of misleading to newer players. It won't show you players lurking nearby. It'll only show you a player's name if they have spoken on proximity chat near you, and then it remains in that menu for the entire match. As proof, check it. I load into a new match and immediately see a name, Mexicutioner, who I'm hoping is a part-time luchador. I run around for the entire match, and no matter how many times I check the in-proximity menu, his name still appears. And no, he was not following me. Even when there's 20 seconds left in the game and I'm literally the last player on the entire map, the in-proximity menu still shows his name and many others. Again, it only shows you players who have spoken on the mic near you at any point in the game. And to prove you can't use it to detect rats, here I am out in the open. I see a nearby player and open the menu to prove he is not on the proximity menu. He isn't. These names are all players who already chatted near me earlier. The guy even shoots me, and as he runs over to try and maybe finish me off, he still doesn't appear on the in-proximity menu. Eventually, he starts talking on the mic, asking if I had shot him earlier, and only then do I finally hit escape, revealing his name has finally appeared on the in-proximity menu. This myth is officially busted. Here's another weird one. I've heard that if you hit sprint and then go into your inventory, it acts as an auto run feature. Turns out the answer to that one actually depends on the input method that you're using. If you play on controller, then hitting pause when running will basically put your raider on auto sprint, letting you manage your inventory while you run in the background. However, if you play on mouse and keyboard, then this will work a tiny bit differently. Your raider won't continue to run in the background, they'll stand still. But you can use your mouse to navigate your menu and the WASD keys to continue to move your raider around in the background if you wish. This myth is partially confirmed. Allegedly, dealing extra headshot damage to an enemy raider only works if their shield is already broken. I want you to shoot me in like the stomach. Okay, that was the stomach, right? Yep. Now shoot me in the head. Interesting. Yeah, very easy to see that when I get shot in the head, even with my shield up and fully operational, I took way more damage than when I was shot right in the gut, making this myth officially busted. Here's one that takes inspiration from another Embark Studios game, The Finals. The myth is any fire deployed by a blaze grenade or a blaze grenade trap can immediately be extinguished by throwing a smoke grenade. While interesting on paper, this was very easy to disprove. Fire apparently does not give a single F about being hit by smoke in Arc Raiders, meaning this myth is busted. Apparently, dead raiders can completely block doors from closing and completely block off raider hatches. As for raider hatches... Oh no! We learned it depends on when exactly the raider dies in relation to the hatch opening. If the raider dies before the hatch is ever opened, then their body will simply get knocked away by the moving hatch. However, if the raider dies on the hole after the hatch has already been opened, then their body will in fact completely block the hatch from being used. Even after the lid closes, their body remains under the hatch, meaning that raider hatch is now pretty much unusable for the rest of the match. Raider bodies can also completely block doors from being closed, as the door will just auto reopen whenever it attempts to close and touches the body, meaning this myth is 100% confirmed. It's been said that the photoelectric cloak item will only work and hide you from the arc if you activate it before the arc has seen you. This one is easy to get an answer to. Even if the arc is already attacking you, deploying the photoelectric cloak item will immediately hide you from their presence, making you basically invisible to them. It definitely might be safer to activate the cloak before they see you though. Either way, this myth is busted. Here's one we opened up a discussion on in another video, which I'll link down in the video description. The myth is getting knocked off a ledge by a pulse mine will result in no fall damage no matter the height. As we had originally discovered when they were added to the game, a pulse mine that knocks you off a high ledge will severely reduce the amount of fall damage that you take. Even when falling from a great height that would normally injure you, if it happened due to a pulse mine, you take less or no damage at all. However, what if you got knocked off a very high ledge? All right, I died. It would seem that if the ledge you're knocked off is high enough, you absolutely can take fall damage, meaning this myth is busted. Apparently, enemy raiders cannot hear the sound of you or a teammate using the adrenaline shot item. The thought process is as follows. Because you can always hear the sound of a shield recharger being used, a more sneaky idea to get out of a PvP encounter might be to use an adrenaline shot, which the enemy might not be able to hear, and then quietly run away. I 100% heard that. Yeah, I can hear that loud and clear, making that myth very busted. And you know what else I can hear loud and clear? Podcasts, music, and whatever the hell else I want to listen to, thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. Did you not get the gift you wanted over the holidays? I mean, God love your family, but they gave you the same sweater for the third time in a row. Look, I'm sure they mean well, but now is the perfect time to get a gift for yourself. Enter Raycon's Essential Open Earbuds. Regular earbuds block out everything. Someone trying to get your attention in the other room, someone knocking on the front door to your home. You get the idea. The Raycon Essential Open Earbuds sit just outside of your ear canal, so you can get really clear sound, but you can still hear what is going on around you, which is great because the last thing you want is to not hear the mailman knocking at your door and he leaves you one of those annoying little slips that says the person wasn't home when you were actually there. I really hate that. I don't really jog because F that noise, but I really enjoy wearing these on walks and when I'm cooking dinner. They're comfortable as hell. Whether it's for yourself or maybe you forgot to give a gift to your relative last month, Raycon has you covered with a New Year sale going on right now. The Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you crush your New Year's goals. Go to buyraycon.com/falloutopen to get 20% off site-wide. Thank you again, Raycon, for sponsoring today's video. All right, we back. Here's a weird one. You can completely trap a surveyor using barricades. I originally tried setting up 3 barricades out in the open and seeing if I could bait a surveyor into charging me, which would result in him getting trapped. Unfortunately, surveyors aren't very bright. Thankfully, I found another opportunity when the surveyor's natural pathing was interrupted by a nearby object. It wasn't easy, but the surveyor now had nowhere to go and couldn't get out, meaning this myth is very much confirmed. Apparently, snitch scanners won't work at all when used on Stella Montis. And at first glance, it would seem that this could be true. Throwing them doesn't do anything because the vast majority of the map is all indoors. If you throw a scanner, it literally does nothing. However, if you go to one of the areas of the map that includes an outdoor section, the snitch scanner comes to life when thrown. I found this to work on both the loading bay area and certain areas of the lobby as well, where there are small holes up in the ceiling. It definitely won't always be the case depending on where you are on the map, but this myth is busted. Apparently, the barricade item can take more damage from the front than from the back. Let's find out. And now again from the back. Both times the barricade broke after being hit with 13 shots, meaning this myth is 100% busted. Next up, activating a blaze grenade trap can set off a synth fuel can. As we can see, when the collapsing barricade auto-triggers the blaze grenade trap, the resulting fire has no effect on the synth fuel can. It would have been really funny, but unfortunately this myth is busted. Apparently, if you use a Snaphook to get on top of and ride an arc, you can throw a lure grenade, which the arc will chase after, effectively letting you steer them. Now, riding a Rocketeer isn't as hard as you might think. When I was up there, I threw a lure grenade fully expecting the Rocketeer to chase it hardcore across the map and kinda let me bootleg steer him, but oddly that didn't happen. While he eventually did turn his attention to and shoot and destroy one of the lure nades I'd thrown, I think the Rocketeer absolutely knew that somebody was on top of him and was way more concerned with that. No steering was involved, I didn't get my own personal arc escort, this myth is busted. Apparently, standing behind a barricade will block all damage from a deadline mine. And for the record, out of every myth we tested, the slow ticking noise made this one of the most nerve-wracking ones to test by far. Barricades really are that good at their job. This myth is confirmed. And on a similar note, closed doors can block all explosive damage. Just like the barricade, doors are stronger than they look. This myth is 100% confirmed. Allegedly, you can take out a Wasp by throwing just one volcanic rock. This one was fairly annoying to dive into. After a lot of volcanic rock throwing, we came to the conclusion that one well-aimed rock throw can in fact break an entire propeller off a Wasp. Now, while breaking 2 propellers on a Wasp will always destroy them, there is a small chance that after destroying only one propeller, it will crash into the ground and die. Meaning this myth is actually plausible, but definitely not guaranteed. Apparently, if you're very accurate, you can shoot a rocket fired by a Rocketeer mid-flight. Yeah, this one went about as well as you'd expect. Despite some very valiant attempts and a few moments where it seemed like the rocket definitely should have been shot, it still flew in at Mach speed and took care of business, so to speak. Rest in spaghetti, this myth is busted. Next up, when using the Looting Mark III Survivor Augment, your health will regen up to 75% of your max downed health. Apparently though, if you just repeatedly tap the W key when downed, you can move around while still keeping 75% of your health meter. To test this, I first downed myself and then crawled around while straight up holding down the W key. As expected, my health bar continued to go down. Trying it over again and instead repeatedly tapping the W key to move forward, I was able to both crawl forward and keep my health meter consistently at 75%. There's a reason it's considered one of the best augments in the game, and this myth is officially confirmed. I've read several times that showstoppers can't stun bastions or bombardiers, but Hornet drivers can. This was very interesting, but surprisingly yielded the exact opposite result. A direct hit from a showstopper can still stun a bastion in place, resulting in them temporarily shutting down and not being able to shoot you. On the other hand, the Hornet driver is the far inferior option, and even after taking one dead on, the bastion won't even blink an eye. This myth is absolutely busted. Apparently, if you don't have a lure grenade handy, but you do have a volcanic rock, you can throw one and it'll distract any nearby arc. This was very easy to test, as believe it or not, there are volcanic rocks in the official practice area. And despite throwing many of them all over the room, the arc turret in the corner never really seemed to care. The only time it did flinch is when I hit the damn thing with a rock directly. This myth is 100% busted. Apparently, carry weight affects your movement speed even if you aren't over encumbered. To test this, I ran in a completely straight line while my raider had absolutely nothing in their inventory, and then again while my inventory was full to the point that I was almost over encumbered. As you can see in the side-by-side comparison, the running speed is 100% identical in both cases, meaning this myth is unquestionably busted. Apparently, if you jump every few seconds while riding on top of an arc, you won't get bucked off. There are many clips of players out there riding arc and eventually getting thrown off. The rumor goes, though, that there's an internal timer on the arc that activates when you begin riding it, and as long as you occasionally jump, you will reset that timer and be able to ride it forever. And as cool as that sounds, unfortunately, it is totally bogus. Every time that I or a friend of mine attempted this, there was no escape escaping the inevitable. No matter how many times we jumped, we'd eventually get thrown off, making this myth busted. Here's a really risky one. You can shoot missiles fired by the queen and the matriarch directly out of the air. The answer to this one is a tad complicated. Missiles fired by the queen move much slower and in a more predictable pattern, and as it turns out, they aren't terribly difficult to shoot out of the air at all. On the other hand, missiles fired by the matriarch not only travel way faster, but they often change directions mid-flight and are incredibly difficult to track. While I wasn't able to shoot any of the matriarch missiles out of the air, I was, however, able to hit and break the flashbang canisters that the matriarch can also deploy. If anyone has a clip of them being able to bullseye a matriarch missile, I'd love to see it, but because you can destroy queen missiles and flashbang canisters, the myth is confirmed, but with an asterisk next to it for now. Apparently, if you use the Agave juice item on a teammate, they'll get all the benefits of the stamina buff, but with none of the downsides, aka the small penalty to your health. Normally, when used on yourself, the Agave juice item will act like a bootleg adrenaline shot, but with the drawback of a minor health penalty. Oddly enough, if you get a teammate to use the item on you instead, turns out, yeah, you get the stamina benefit but take no health damage penalty, making this myth confirmed. Here's one I've gone over in past videos on this channel, but now with a surprise twist ending. When holding a carryable object, you move faster going backwards than forwards. When arc raiders first came out, this was a widely held belief. But it would appear that at some point, something got changed, as I retested this recently and found out that you go just as fast forwards as you do backwards when holding a carryable object. It was true whether I was just walking or if I were sprinting, meaning this myth is now 100% busted. I'm always on the hunt for more blueprints, and I've been told that you can easily get the Bobcat blueprint on Blue Gate's Locked Gate event before any of the gates are officially opened. To test this, I grabbed a communication tower key and headed to the Pilgrim's Peak area right when I spawned in. The theory goes, the Bobcat blueprint has a heavy chance of appearing during the Locked Gate event, and that it can appear in almost any container, but especially if that container is indoors. Pilgrim's Peak is one of the few indoor areas on the map you can actually access during the Locked Gate event, even before any of the gates are opened by completing the minigame. I used my keycard at Pilgrim's Peak, did a little bit of looting, and almost immediately found a Bobcat blueprint. Your RNG may definitely differ, but this myth is officially confirmed. Here's an interesting one. The Calming Stroll perk on the Raider skill tree flat out does not work. The Calming Stroll perk reads, while walking, your stamina regenerates as if you were standing still. Recently, players have reported that this perk is somehow broken. I was curious and went in to go give it a test. At first, it seemed the rumors were true. In a side-by-side comparison, I noticed that when walking, my stamina was still coming back noticeably slower than when I was just standing still. After digging a little bit deeper, I learned your experience when using this perk may differ depending on if you're playing on mouse and keyboard or controller. You see, when playing on controller, you can very gently nudge your joystick forward, which the game counts as walking. As you can see in the side-by-side comparison on controller, the perk actually works. We regen our stamina at the same rate as when we're standing completely still. However, if you're playing on mouse and keyboard, you can't gently hold down the W key. Turns out the side-by-side comparison we showed earlier isn't really considered walking when you're on M&K. In fact, if you want to activate walking on mouse and keyboard, you have to do so manually, which you need to set up by going into the controls and designating a way to activate walking. This explains why some M&K players felt that the perk wasn't working, and this myth is busted. Apparently, having two players both hit the extract button at the same time in an extraction elevator makes the extraction go faster. To test this, I recorded myself extracting completely alone, and then again with another player, making sure that we did a 3, 2, 1 countdown before we both hit the button. Unfortunately, as cool as it would be to have the game reward you for synchronized extracting, the timer was exactly the same, meaning this myth is busted. The next one is tricky. As the rumor goes, you can shoot enemy grenades right out of the air. This does make sense, as it's completely possible to shoot certain grenades when they're stationary on the ground, like a trigger grenade. Unfortunately, this wasn't exactly easy to test. Thankfully, I'm a persistent man and eventually was able to successfully shoot a trigger nade right out of the air, meaning this myth is confirmed. Apparently, you take more fall damage if you're over encumbered. This was pretty easy to test. Just fall off a high ledge one time while you're carrying very little, and then do it again while you're over encumbered. Comparing how much damage we took each time reveals that both times we fell, we lost the exact same amount of health, meaning this myth is busted. According to some players, walking backwards will restore stamina faster than walking forwards, which is is just weird and kooky enough for me to want to try it. And as much as I'd love for this to be true, I discovered that walking backwards and walking forwards unfortunately gives back the exact same amount of stamina, meaning this myth is busted. Next up, you can prevent a group of birds from being startled and flying away if you hit them with a showstopper first. This myth goes hand in hand with a theory that because the birds can't be shot, that they're actually secretly a hologram or some visual distortion being produced by the arc. And as cool of a theory as that is, I found that tagging groups of birds with a showstopper did nothing to stop them from flying away, even though you'd expect them to get zapped into oblivion, making this myth busted. Apparently, being over-encumbered will affect your crawling speed when downed. To test this, I went ahead and downed myself in a game, one time while I was carrying very little, and then again when I was over-encumbered. In a side-by-side comparison, we can clearly see that the crawl speed is exactly the same in both cases, meaning this myth is definitely busted. And on a similar note, it's been said that being over-encumbered will affect your climbing speed. As you can imagine, this test went extremely similar to the one regarding your crawling speed. There was no difference at all in a side-by-side comparison, meaning this myth is completely busted. Here's an interesting one regarding your loadout. Augments will only lose durability when your raider is killed. This is something I'd heard a lot, and it's interesting considering that your weapons lose durability every time they're used. You'd think it would be the case that your augments would lose durability every time you take damage or every time your raider is downed. In a match with my friend, I intentionally downed myself and got revived, only to find out that my augment had maintained 100 out of 100 durability. However, after surrendering and officially dying out of the match, my friend looted my body to discover my augment had gone down to 70 out of 100 durability, aka it had gone down by exactly 30%, making this myth confirmed. Apparently, you can survive a great fall from any height by using the Snaphook on the way down. Oh! This was incredibly nerve-wracking to test, but it ended up being true, provided that you remember to manually hit the aim button to break the Snaphook cord after a certain point. You see, if you don't manually break the Snaphook cord, then after you fall, your raider will kind of go up and down like a big yo-yo, which doesn't help you at all. But if before you start getting pulled up back by the hook, you manually hit the aim button and break the cord, you'll free yourself from the yo-yo effect and land safely, provided you're close to the ground. Be careful doing this, but this myth is officially confirmed. Next up, launching a deadline with Raider Flares has been 100% patched out of the game. This is in reference to a weird trick in Arc Raiders where you're able to use the Raider Flare item and the deadline item together in order to launch an exploding deadline horizontally like a missile. And despite whatever patchwork Embark Studios had recently deployed, it would seem it is still very much possible provided you do the following. 1. Place the Raider Flare on the ground and launch it. 2. Place a trigger nade a few feet behind the Raider Flare. 3. Place a deadline on the used Raider Flare. And number 4, wait a few seconds, then detonate the trigger nade to send that deadline flying. This myth is 100% busted. You can stick a teammate using trigger nades and use them as a live kamikaze attack. Unfortunately, this is not completely true. As most veteran players will tell you, throwing a trigger nade at your teammate will simply result in the nade just bouncing right off and landing on the ground. We tried to get around this by having my teammate drop a weapon on the ground, and then I attached a trigger nade to the weapon itself. When my teammate picked up the weapon though, the nade fell off to the ground once again. There is one way to get around this though. If you find a battery or other carryable object, you can stick trigger nades directly to that object. Then your teammate can carry that object into whatever danger they want, and if you activate the nades, they'll go off and your teammate won't be harmed because Arc Raiders doesn't feature friendly fire. This myth is half busted with an asterisk next to it due to the workaround. Apparently, you can set up a blaze grenade trap inside of a doorway so that it insta-pops when the door is opened. This one was easy to test as there's a doorway right in the practice area. When you try to start placing the grenade in the doorway itself, the game will kind of fight back a little bit and try to reposition the grenade outside of the door. But as long as you move slowly and carefully, you can position the grenade to set up inside the doorway itself. When I hit the button to open the door, the trap auto detonates, both covering the entire doorway floor in fire and making this myth 100% confirmed. Next up, you can be killed by an incoming supply drop. It can be a bit tricky to time, but after calling in a supply drop, if you just look up and follow the drop as it comes in, you can time it right where it just kind of falls right on top of you. After multiple attempts, we found that even if you're hit dead on by the supply drop, it will only at best knock you back a little bit, you won't get killed, making this myth officially busted and meaning that you can safely attempt to get the just dropping in achievement without having to worry, which you can get for getting hit by an incoming supply drop. The stronger the healing item used on a downed player, the more effective the bleed out pause. Not only did this turn out to be true, but it yielded yielded some interesting numbers, which I'm happy to share with y'all. Using a common tier healing item, aka the bandage, bleed out was paused on a downed raider for around 15.5 seconds. Using an uncommon tier healing item, aka the herbal bandage, bleed out on a downed raider was paused for around 20 seconds. Using a rare tier healing item, aka the sterilized bandage and the Vita shot, both managed to pause bleed out on the raider for 35 seconds. But the most interesting result was the epic tier healing item, the Vita spray, which didn't just pause bleed out on the downed raider, but completely reverted it. The downed raider's health meter replenishes when getting hit by the Vita spray. Very handy information across the board, and this myth is confirmed. Next up, if you hold the roll button the entire time when falling, you'll auto roll when you hit the ground. Gotta tell you, this one was really easy to disprove. Just go into the practice area, fall off a ledge, and immediately hold the roll button when you start falling. You'll splat right onto the ground, damaging your health bar and making this one totally busted. I had never even thought to try this, but apparently the end of game meteor can fall on top of you if you're standing in the right spot on the map when it comes down. And as great as that sounds, unfortunately we learned that the giant arc orbiter that comes crashing down at the end of the match lands just outside of the playable area. Even if you attempt to deliberately run right towards it as it comes down, you'll get the turn back message and the game will repeatedly push you back into the playable area, putting the orbiter just out of reach. This myth is busted. Apparently, synth fuel can be shot out of a raider's hands, but only if they don't have a shield equipped at the time. I found a guy who was all too eager to shoot me and test this without asking any follow-up questions, and unfortunately, the big red canister in my hand did not go boom when he tried to shoot it, even though I wasn't equipped with a shield at the time. This myth is full-on busted. And finally, you can use noisemakers to eliminate fall damage. This one is weird and requires an explanation. Apparently, by placing several noisemakers end to end, you can essentially make a little pole that you can stick out of a wall horizontally. And not only can you stand on those noisemakers, but I was told by a friend that if you then dismantle them while standing on them, you will slowly fall with them and not take fall damage when you hit the ground. Bizarrely, it turned out to be true. I even attempted to fall off the tower on Dam Battlegrounds and managed to fall down to the lower roof without taking any fall damage, making this myth both insane and confirmed. If you are still watching this video, I truly do want to thank you, because watching a video all the way to the end is probably the most helpful thing you can do to help it be more recommended across YouTube. So thank you. And before you go, if there's any other myths in-game you'd like for me to test, let me know down in the comment section. Hit the like button on today's vid if you think I earned it, and big shout out to my friends for helping me get clips and research. Thanks very much. I'll see you on stream.